started off as a cultural links volunteer, but there's such a waiting list. Most of the families I was being presented with were 2 to 3 years already in Canada. So they kind of worked through all the metal. I then started with Reception House, which is run by the Rotaries, which is perfect, it's beautiful. But that's where they come right off the plane, and that's when they need the most help. I work with them from Somalia, Afghanistan, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Uganda right now. So I'm dealing with 5 countries. I walk amongst cultures, and I can say hello in just about every language in the world. So I just want to start off. Calvin Mengosa came in from Zambia, or no, from Zimbabwe, and he's gave me permission to share these photos because most of us have preconceived notions of what a refugee camp is. I know before I started with them, I always pictured what we saw in the news, and that's not always true. So Calvin, and it's interesting because when sharing these pictures, he was so worried I was going to put them on Facebook. The things I'm most proud of him for, he is most embarrassed by. So he's going, who's going to see these? So enjoy these photos because he really had to think whether he was willing to put it out. Calvin's seen there chopping trees. Zimbabwe has their refugee camp is right in a park. So what he's doing is, first of all, illegal, which I pointed out to him, and he said, we had to live. So he's chopping trees with an axe. They gather it in lengths, they haul it out, him and his friend. And what they're doing is making charcoal, which is how he made a living. He had become, he's an amazing entrepreneur. So they would cut this wood by hand with an axe, haul it out. It would take weeks to get enough. They'd stack it up, cover it in wet grass, build a fire in it, cover it with dirt, and basically end up digging it up. So this is like a ton of work for it to make charcoal. And then they would sell the charcoal for people needed it for fires, for cooking, that type of thing. There he is, they're digging it up with help from some of the local ladies and some of the other men. It supported a number of families, charcoal. And I said to him, boy, you must have made really good money. That's a lot of work. And he goes, oh yeah, $8 to $10 for a sack, 50 kilos. And he said, but that would let us buy soap. It would let us buy some food. So, you know, he was very industrious with that. And then he needed a house. Calvin is 30 years old. He has married, his wife's here, she's expecting, she's 5 months pregnant. He lives with Fida, Rema, Dorcas is his niece. Fida's husband was killed in the war. He's missing, an older brother is missing, and 2 sisters are missing, and the parents are dead. He always says to me, a lot of people died in the war. While they were out cutting wood for making charcoal, his business partner was attacked and killed by an elephant. He said it's very dangerous in the bush. So they needed to make a house. And so what do? You know, if you picked any of us up and dropped us into this situation, I don't know how to make it like brick. So there he's showing that you can see the form here, which they made, and then they make the long end. He's making bricks because he needs to build a house for his family, for his sisters. So they lay all the bricks out, build their own kiln. After it's done, put it together, thatch the roof with going out and finding little sticks, and he's explaining how they tie it all together. Then after they got their house done, and I don't have a picture of their house, he had it on video, but he had no still pictures, because everybody has a video camera over there, which always amazes me. They decided that they would build a church, because they needed a church. So here's the church under construction. So they built all the bricks by themselves. And there you can see one of the houses in the background. The ground is a well. And this is Delita, his wife, and him doing their laundry. And surprising, I got to their house. I love the little stories to tell about them. I got to their house. They have a 3-bedroom townhouse they've rented here for 6 of them. And he goes, the washing machine doesn't work. Because I go down, there's laundry hanging everywhere, and they got sheets soaking in the bathtub because the laundry machine doesn't work. And I go, why? And he goes, it makes a lot of noise, and when I open the lid, it stops. So I explained to them that was the spin cycle, and for safety when you open the lid. So he's like, wow. And they had no idea what the dryer was. So I showed them, we spun out all the water out, and I showed them the dryer. We go upstairs, have tea, go down, and his sister pulls them out hot and dry and goes, this is a miracle. So, and he's got a university degree in economics. He's actually very smart. They're all really well educated. 25 to 24 and has the child. So then they get an invitation to a new life. They were in the refugee camp 5 to 6 years. And every day you go down and stand in line and apply to the UN. You want to get out. So the UN decides where you're going to go. And it's interesting because I've worked with numerous families, and I always say to them, do you have family or anyone here? And they go, yeah, I have a sister and a brother and an aunt in Toronto. And I go, why didn't they send you to Toronto? It's like, I don't know. Like, to me, when they're deciding where you go in somewhere, they should at least send you where you have a support system, not put you 3 provinces away. So the UN decides where to go. And this I did on the phone with Calvin. His English is good, but over the phone it's a little hard with the accent. He says, first you're interviewed to see if you meet the criteria of Canada. They want to see, they do a medical checkup, they do blood tests, they check for HIV and TB. They compare the work that you did in Africa so you can learn to work in Canada. He says that's the main thing. They want to know that you're going to survive here. He said then they do a security check because they want to know what's going on. And that consists of, when they came into Zimbabwe out of the Congo, they had to make sure. So he says, you got to remember what you told them. Because if there's anything different, they'll just refuse you because then they think you're lying. The immigration paperwork then gets started, and immigration can still refuse entry for illness or other things. And I said, what other things? He goes, I don't know, other things. So they don't get a lot of information. So I want everybody to take a moment because, just think about this. Could you, today, if there was a war broke out or you were in a position and you had your family, your friends, and basically your little group was going, because they've left behind, his wife left behind sisters, brothers, his mom, her dad was ill, he passed away, his funeral's today. So think about leaving your family behind. I watched them come in. Some of the families from the Congo arrive at our airport carrying 2 green garbage bags. That's their luggage. You go to a place you know nothing about, and my little story with that is Maggie said to me, she's 17, she said, when we found out we were going to Canada, she said, we talked about we were going to find good mud, we were going to build a big house, and we were going to open a business, and we were going to do all these things, she said. Then we arrive, and we're driving through, and they arrive quite often they come in on night flight, Air Canada, and she said, we're driving looking at downtown Edmonton going, I don't think there's mud here. So, you don't understand the language, the food, the money, the culture. So it's pretty well a shock. They left 100 degrees and landed December 12th. The government meets them, a worker meets them with a taxi and takes them to reception house. And they are given at the airport boots, a jacket, mitts, scarf, and basically just some winter clothes. However, they're all wearing little African dresses, and it's cold. And I went and checked the temperature. It was only like -15 that day, so that wasn't too bad. So they come, it's just absolute culture shock. And they're very adaptable. So it's like, welcome to Canada, it's your new beginning. Okay, they arrive at reception house, and I'll tell you, we are so lucky that the Rotarians have built reception house here. Other cities don't have it, and I don't know, has everyone here seen reception house? Okay, it's an apartment building that has been converted into 6 small apartments. The apartments have been furnished with beds, dressers, it's nice, bunk beds, futons in the living room. It's set up that each apartment can hold a lot of people. They're greeted usually with a meal, preferably from their country. They try to make them feel comfortable. They get them settled in, and the next day they're taken shopping and expected to start cooking for themselves. And Massey, who's 15, said, I was so glad when you brought us a chicken, he says, because we lived on rice for 4 days. Because they don't know where to shop. The workers are busy. They do the best. And I really feel that the numbers that come in sometimes, it's hard for the workers. They're stretched. So they get linked up in 14 days. It's like, welcome to Canada. This is your 14-day fast tracking. They set them up with banking, financial, health and education services. They receive an Alberta healthcare and a social insurance number. They're shown very quickly how to use buses. They're shown very quickly where to shop. And reception house is beautiful, but it's in an area where there really isn't access to Superstore or anywhere like that. So there's a little African grocery store and a few other ones. It's hard for them to get around, and it's just a whirlwind. It's just almost overwhelming. I don't know how I would cope because they just get so much thrown at them. Well, adjusting, try to find clothes. They take them to Value Village, those places, and get them some warm clothes. I have no extra clothes left in my closet anymore. And this is Patrick, Nima, and Elijah, and they came in from Zambia in December. Patrick was a farmer there. He was very fit when he arrived because he says we did everything by hand. You know, no tractors, nothing. They dug everything by hand. And Elijah at that time, in his picture, is probably about 6 months old, and his wife Nina. Beautiful couple. Patrick speaks limited English, Nina speaks none, and they're not really well educated even in their own country, but they have the will to try to get here. So they get their settlement money, and I'm using them as my case study because I'm pretty close on where within $50 on what they're getting because I've seen their checks and helped them out a lot. What I've done is gone out into the community and begged, borrowed, robbed, stole, and cajoled everyone into giving me kitchen stuff. What these women need is, you know, pots, pans, dishes, because they come with nothing but their clothes, and it's not even close suitable to our weather. So a family of 3 gets $1,250 approximately per month. 300, this is when they arrive. They're given an initial 300 per person for clothing and personal items. They get government furniture, they get beds, dressers, couch, lamp, table, and chairs. In the case of this family, they were given a queen-size bed and a crib. $1,000 for purchasing household items, and I don't know if you know how far that goes, but when you have to buy every single thing that's in your house, $1,000 doesn't go far. So I go out and I scrounge bedding. I have people bring me bedding. My husband does work on a Goodwill store in the basement. And I go, okay, I'll get rid of it. And I deliver it all out to people because the workers now phone me and go, I have a family going in. Because if I can save them even $100 in buying bedding by having decent sheets and comforters. And with Patrick and Nima, they never asked for anything, which surprises me. They were living in the winter in their apartment, and it was 3 weeks before they said, we have no blankets. They had bed sheets, they had no blankets. So instantly I made phone calls. My friend Aaron James came up with 2 queen-size comforters. They were cold. He says, we're so cold, they were sleeping in their jackets. So they get $850 given to them for a damage deposit. On day 15, they're out of reception house into their own apartment, and then they're pretty well on their own.
How long do they get the per month money?
They get the per month money for a year.
Where's that money come from?
Yeah.
Federal government.
And then what happens after a year? They have to be...
They have to go to school for 1 year. That's required, and the government just put into place, you have to have the cultural link, or the links program, which is the first level of English as second language. And if you don't have that, you no longer can apply to be a Canadian citizen. So everybody's scrambling for links, which means people who were here for a long time and didn't do it are now scrambling. And what it's done is now people are waiting 6 to 7 months to get into ESL courses. And they're now worried because they're going, we have to go to school for a year, our money's only for a year, we can't get into school. So that's causing a lot of stress with these people. This
So
is
after a
Nima and
year,
Elijah.
they're completely on their own, no matter what.
They can go on to welfare, like Alberta Works will pick it up and keep them in school, but basically, after, the longest they get support is 2 years.
Who pays for the education?
The education is through ESL, and that's federal.
Alberta Healthcare too is all paid for?
Alberta Healthcare is paid for, but it's very limiting in what they give them. One of the ladies, which I'll be showing you later, had a dental infection, and I went in because they're supposed to get their prescriptions. It's much like anyone else being on Alberta Works. And they would only pay for one of the drugs, so I paid for the other 2 and the wash she needed to be on because she needed it. This is her health. So the monthly budget for Nima and Patrick, because the government actually only allows about $700 for rent and utilities. We'll try to find that in Alberta. So they live in a 1-bedroom apartment, nice building, very bad neighborhood. $800 a month includes their utilities. It's a small apartment. $60 for phone and internet, and that's a deal Shaw has put together for them. And they have to have a phone, because I questioned that, but they absolutely have to have a phone because the workers have to be able to reach them. And quite often use the phone to contact the interpreters. Because I go over there and if I can't explain it and do charades well enough, I have to find someone who can speak the language. So that's basically their budget for the month. They get about $250 to $300 per month child tax credit. It arrives 90 days after, but it is paid back, and that's the same as any Canadian gets. So their total income works out to $1,140, and honestly, I don't have any food in there yet. These are just faces. I want to put faces to these people. This is at my Christmas party. I had 85 people out for Christmas. They're from Sri Lanka, they're from Afghanistan, they're from Iraq. Within the families I work at, it's pretty amazing because they go, you can't mix those people, and they all have an understanding. I don't care what your wars are at home, they're from different tribes. And Sunni and Shiite Muslims, I bring them all together. They're my family. This is a picture of Zulfa. They've been in town for 4 days. I took her to Superstore grocery shopping. It's cheaper, and I drove them there. She had a panic attack on me about 15 minutes after from the sheer volume of the food. We had to sit her down, get her coat off, get her a drink of water, help her with her groceries. They are not used to it. This is something that we did at Ravinia Hall, which is of interest. We all threw in $40 and brought one of the families out, because I think when you break bread together, people start to realize they're the same. So we had a really good time. We made falafel, donuts. They put on a feast for us. We made enough food that we ended up calling in the neighbors, the husbands, and anyone else who would come, because it just was a huge meal. And we had a lot of fun together. And especially in the rural areas, I hear, you know, they get $15,000 each, I was told by a lady. They get $15,000 each regardless of age. I'm like, maybe in 2 years if you add it all up. So there's a lot of misconceptions. 90 days after arriving in Canada, and this one blew me away. 90 days after arriving in Canada, your loan papers arrive in the mail. They don't understand them. I'm leaving the States, or I'm leaving the refugee camps to come into Canada. They're required to sign papers. They don't quite understand them, and this is what one of the workers said to me. They're agreeing to pay back the loan for their airfare. And the numbers that they had for airfare, so Zulfa, for example, her and her 2 children, has a loan for $5,565 for one-way tickets coming from Pakistan. I went on and Googled. That's really high. So I questioned it. They don't get any breakdown for what their loan is for. They're just told it's for transportation. And they go, oh, the extra $1,500 to $2,000 that I was questioning, oh, that's for medical or something. I can't get a breakdown. And it's at 1.2% interest, which is fine, and they have to pay it off over 5 years. It's a $75 payment out of already a strapped budget. You know, and they're required to go to school. They need bus fare, and Edmonton will not recognize ESL students as student fare, so they pay $90 for a bus pass per month instead of $48. Huge difference. That's their children's food. It's sad. There has been actually families come in and say, we want to go back. They want to go back. We can feed our children there. At least we had food. So Zulfa went in for dental emergencies. I phoned the federal government, checked everything out, and they said, we don't do fillings, we don't do any of that, but we will do extraction. So I went over. Her face was like this. She had an impacted wisdom tooth, and it was absolutely blowing up with. And they gave her, my dentist took her in on making a promise and a guarantee that we'll somehow pay the bill if the government won't. She was in agony. So we took her in. They pulled the top tooth, the top wisdom tooth. The bottom one, she had to go on antibiotics for 10 days, use this wash and stuff, go back, and they had to surgically put a couple stitches in. So we just got the bill back from my dentist phone and said, the federal government only pays for straight emergency extractions. Surgical extractions, they don't. So she now has a $280 dental bill to pay, because the government has decided that the true emergencies are emergencies. And this is Delita. Delita's pregnant. And, you know, there's family emergencies come up because they left their family behind. Her dad died last Sunday. He was dying of liver cancer. They weren't aware of it. Delita's got herself into a little bit of hot water that we're working and sorting our way through, which is what I do. She went out and worked for 2 weeks, made $700, which they were not allowed to make that much. And her husband went out and worked for a couple weeks and made $500 doing construction, because they had to send money back. Her mom has 6 kids and 3 orphans she's taken in, and her dad was lying in the hospital, and she had to send money home. She had to see that her mom had money, and she paid for her father's care. So now she's in a bit of a pickle because when they claim this income, they're going to take it off their income here. So I have no idea how they're going to pay the rent. So, you know, it's just sad. Dorcas is 9 years old. I took her into the dentist, again on a big prayer and promise, and we're working through, I spent a lot of time digging through government stuff. Dorcas is a beautiful little girl. She was losing the bone from having periodontal work. What had happened is they don't ever get dental work in the cleaning, so the bacteria that was trapped in the scale under the gums was actually destroying the bone. At 9 years old, within a couple of years, without proper cleaning and dental care, chances are she's losing her teeth. I'm big on teeth, so I just go, we'll find the money, don't worry. So I plan on doing some fundraising. And arguing with the government, same with Massey. Massey needs braces, and he's from Afghanistan. Really good kid. And we took him in, got his teeth cleaned, and it was expensive. The guy said he's never seen so much under the gum tartar, and he would have lost his teeth. So it's preventative now or expensive later. Sarah is his little sister, and there she's got her headscarf on. Quite often from Afghanistan, they don't wear the headscarf, which they've dressed up in full. They came to my house for Christmas, and they dressed up in full gear. And she has 6 or 7 cavities that need to be filled. We're working on that with Alberta Health Benefits, but it can take a couple months. And then this is the the Catholic Social Services skating party. They're really good. They've been on all kinds of events. This just gives you an idea. I don't know, they were so funny. They'd never really been out. We put ice skates on them and went out and skated, had a wiener roast. This is their summertime picnic that they do. They get everyone together in the communities. They mix and match. They put on hot dogs, hamburgers, races, that kind of thing. And basically, I guess, you know, there's a lot of international aid out there, but what people don't realize is we've actually brought the refugee camps into our backyard. We brought them home. And there's families living in third world conditions, wondering how they're going to eat and how they're going to get milk for their children in our backyards. And it's one people, like we're all the same. And that's where I like to get them all together because they all have preconceived notions of what everyone else is. Kelvin was so funny. He was here and he's sitting down and he's telling me the difference between black people and white people. And I just let him talk and I finally said, Calvin, how many white people do you know? I know you, Mommy, he says. I said, well, if you're judging all white people on me, you've got a lot to learn. So, you know, basically people are all the same. I have big dreams. And my friend Colin Larson always says, a dream too big is just the right size. What I would like to see set up, and if anyone knows a lawyer who's willing to help me pro bono, because there's no money, I would like to set up a foundation where we could do fundraising, because if you write a check into Catholic Social Services, it just disappears. It does not get where it really needs to be. So a foundation to help with dental care. I'd like to do micro loans. These people will want to pay their own way. But they can't just write. They need driver's licenses, they need things, but they can't maybe spend $300 right there. But they'd happily pay it back over 15 months or whatever at a very low interest rate or no interest rate. And that would allow them to do things like driver's license, car repairs, small little home business setups. They're really talented. The handwork these women do is amazing. So that's it. You know,
Just a question. So the UN
says, we're going to take all these refugees, they can't afford them. So then they're now mandating into the churches and asking them to help out through different ways to do it. And it's just a case of educating. These people are educated. We have the highest number of PhD cab drivers in the world. Because they don't. And I talked to a dentist who's in training right now. He was a dentist for 17 years, and I believe Iran. And great guy. He's offered to do some of the teeth if I can manage to work through the system to guarantee to get my people to get. And through the university dental program. And he said, he goes, 200 people apply every year to the dental program. They allow 3 foreign dentists in per session. So he says your chances of coming here, and a lot of them have family. They don't have 3 years of money to just sit and go back to school to work in their trade. So basically they come and they hope for a better life for their children, but they're just not sure where they're going to go. Anyone else have questions?
Did you access the food banks?
We access the food banks. There's 2 food banks. There's a Muslim food bank that's privately run that gets absolutely zero support from anybody other than the Muslim community, and they will accept anyone on low income, and you can go twice a month. And it actually gives them the food they like. I worry about the food bank. I take them to the food bank, and I'm working with 5 families out of probably thousands. So I go to the food bank, and I go through, and I have to explain every single can. They have no idea what the food is, so a lot of it ends up in the garbage when they first come. Because they don't want Kraft dinner. They know what peanut butter is. You know, baked beans, things like that. And a funny little story is we went to the food bank, got all these canned foods, come back, and I sit and explain it all. And then I look over, and I always take them a big box of food and stuff as soon as I go to see them. And there's this can of tomato soup beat open with a knife. And I'm going, I know I bought them a can opener. I know I did. So I dig through the drawers, and I'm going, where's your can opener? So I open up a can of baked beans, and I'm halfway around the can, and Patrick goes, that is one great machine. Because they have no canned food in Africa. They have he'd never seen canned food. And then I open up their fridge because they have cooked meat on the stove. I said, you got to keep it in the fridge. He goes to the storeroom. They have every can in the fridge. So I explained that it doesn't have to be in the fridge. So we pull it out, we get the stuff in. It's, it's a learning curve, and people looking at you know what, these people are brilliant, because if you're not, you don't make it through the cans and even get to the cans. So it's just a case of giving them a hand, and that's where they need volunteers or more support when they first arrive. It makes life easy for them. They don't have to bumble through. If you can teach them things like a $12 can opener and talk about canned food. And I sit there and I go, this, yellow beans, this is a vegetable. And at the food bank, I go through the food, because a lot of it I know they won't eat. And they gave us 2 boxes of food and 2 boxes of chocolate and candy. Well, I'm already dealing with dental problems, and so I took everything out that I didn't consider nutritious and said, we really appreciate this. So what I think it is the big stores after Valentine's Day or whatever take the tax write-off and dump it to the food bank for a tax write-off. But these people need nutrition. They do not need sugar and candy, and they're not used to it. So if you don't get them started on it, and the statistics prove that 3 years after refugees arrive, their health goes down as they take on a Western diet. So, when they first come, they're trying to cook the way they do. The Muslim food bank, which could really use some support for donations, you go in and they give you dried chickpeas, they give you the food that they want. They give you lentils, they give meat, and it's run by 3 ladies only in the room about the size of this. They've got half of it with clothes, and it's, they give you the big jugs of oil and stuff. So our food bank, and I think people give generously. I think they just don't know what's needed. And it's bags of cornmeal, it's white corn flour, it's the lentils, the dried beans and things is what they're used to cooking for. So when they go to the food bank, they come home, and Calvin, I was there when they delivered for him the first time, and I just met the family. 3/4 of it was out of date that arrived, or within a day of going on a date. So they were like, we can't eat this. They were very scared of food poisoning. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.